make sure this is good. Okay. I think we're fine. Let me make sure how live we are right now. Let me make sure that we go on YouTube and then everything's okay. Let me go ahead and check it, right? Okay. I think we're good. Okay. So, all right. So I think I'm okay now. All right. Oh, you're over here this time. What's going on, YouTube? The Alphonsus D Gradelock. Welcome back to the channel. So I haven't put up any content this week. This week's been pretty hectic with work, but I do owe you guys quite a bit of the weekly stream that I do for just learning how to overdress, dressing up for overdress. Long story short, getting home late from work, super late on work Monday, really knocked me out, so I was not in the vibe for a stream that Monday. But at least today, that I finished up work a little earlier, I can actually go ahead and show you the next lesson in overdressing. So, if you're just tuning in right now, I had 2 streams before, one of which is a little bit grainy because of the camera quality, but also the second one kind of picked up a little bit better because we were mostly just looking at the various nations that you can play in overdress. So, if you just happen to come to the channel, welcome. I'm the AlphonZeus, just one of the hosts here at Team Gradelock. And yeah, let's dive in. So, right now, as the stream title has said, this is known as the art of attacking. Now, for those of you that have not known, I wrote articles for Cardfight Vanguard a while back regarding the art of defense, how to defend in Cardfight Vanguard. And I didn't really go into the offensive strategy because everyone's pretty practiced and well versed to kind of know how to swing, what to do. But given that this is a tutorial segment, we can go ahead and get this party started with knowing how to win the game. I went over some of the basic rules, how to win, different win conditions of winning, what the cards do, how to read card text, etc. And so it's good, but now we are actually going to go into the nitty-gritty of winning in overdress. And we'll do this in the most traditional way possible, which is going to be just using attacks. Now, some of the stuff will pop up similarly from past streams before, so of course if any of you are unfamiliar with the terminology, feel free to let me know. I'll be more than happy to kind of dive in and really get back into the explanations of the cards, what they do, and I guess little nicknames I like to give them. So with offense, like I said before, according to our Vanguard circle, of course you don't see it on this particular playmat, but there is happens, you have your Vanguard circle, and then you have your rear guard circles. I was just going to put in some cards here for good measure. And so you have your main Vanguard, you have your 2 front row rear guards, and you have your 3 back row rear guards. So I'm going to see if I can also adjust a little bit so you can see a bit better here. And then, of course, you have your counter blast, your main deck, whatever. So we'll kind of set this up right here. And, of course, your main objective is to win by dealing your opponent 6 damage. Now, I know that the glare is a little much, so let me make sure I turn this off here. A little still much from there, so let me see if I could... Because I turn it on, it's not really well. Let me see if I turn this off. Okay. I think this should be fine. Okay. So, now as we get into what the art of attacking is. No matter what, you will be swinging in at least one time, guaranteed every single turn, and that is going to be on your Vanguard. So, what is attacking? Well, you just rest a unit, and you declare that you are going to be attacking them. This is declared in the battle phase, which is the second to last phase of the turn. So, in this game, you have your stand and draw phase, then you have the beginning of your ride phase, and then after your ride phase, you go into your main phase. After your main phase, you have a battle phase. After your battle phase, you go to your end phase, and then it ends turn, and then it switches over to your opponent. So, when you set up everything you need to do when you go on offense, you want to make sure you are confirming what you have on the field is what you are planning to attack with. It's very important that you optimize your field layout before you start attacking, because once you declare your first attack to your opponent, all the cards you see right here are locked in, outside the use of any skills that you can activate. It's a really simple way to miss out on vital information, because a lot of people, they just know that, oh, I have game, I'm going to go straight in the battle phase, and they'll realize that when they say I'm going to attack with this unit, and they'll realize that, oh, I forgot to activate the skill. Well, too late, you're already in battle phase. So that's a common mistake that many players still make, because once they say declaring entering the battle phase, then that's pretty much getting a heads up to the opponent, like, hey, I'm done with my setup, I'm going to start trying to attack you now. So as a rule, you should always keep in mind, because so many people make a misplay off of that. So what happens here? Well, let's just start with our rearguard boosting. So on the rearguard attack, usually a common way of attacking is you attack from the left column to the right column. Now, it's a way to kind of fish out guard pieces, but we can get into a little bit of what they could do defensively later on. For now, it's just kind of introducing to you what the battle phase is, and in order to do a direct attack, like I've done back in episode 1, since I have a booster behind my front row rear guard, I can declare rest and then attack. So usually, once you just rest both of them at the same time, it's kind of declaring to your opponent, like, okay, so this boosting with his rear guard to swing with his rear guard and attack whatever target that they choose, whether it's they attack the opponent's vanguard or they attack another rear guard. And so that is basically what an attack is. You take your booster, you boost it, and then you swing with your front row. Now, of course, there are some special abilities that happens where you can kind of break this pattern, but naturally, this is the way that goes. And then after it, they're in rest, and then you move on to your next swing. So according to what this field looks like, you then swing again, so boost and boost. So this time, you're going to be swinging with Vanguard. Now, what usually happens here is that when they declare a no guard or they guard, you then perform your twin drive, which means you can activate all these potential effects or skills that can happen depending on what you drive check. Now, in looking at what you may drive check, you have to accept that you are revealing to your opponent what is going into your hand. And sometimes you're going to hit yellow, you're going to hit the critical triggers. Maybe you might hit a green trigger, like a heal trigger, or you can hit a blue trigger, a magenta trigger for front, or an orange trigger for draw. And there are times you could hit the magical foily over trigger, which is, of course, a rarity because you only have one card like that in your deck. So when you swing with your Vanguard, after declaring a number, you can't just immediately go into drive check. You have to let your opponent give the opportunity to drop their guard from hand or wherever field that they have, as well as offer them the opportunity to say no guard, so they'll take the hit. Now, attacking is an art where you want to try and maximize the lethality of your attacks versus what you already know is or is not in your opponent's hand. And the Vanguard swing decides the tide of how the rest of that battle phase will go. And so, by natural law, people go from left to right or right to left, or they go by, say, how much power is on this column, how much power is on this column. They swing small to large in terms of numbers. And we'll get into the numbers game a little bit later. But right now, we just want to attack, and you have to wait for your opponent to finish guarding or say no guard. And if your opponent is not done, but you proceed to drive check, that can call you out on a judge, or that can be a problem because your opponent now has information that they probably would have not dropped as much or more guard if they did not see that trigger, or they did not see that non-trigger. It's very important that you allow your opponent enough time and confirm with them to make sure that, okay, may I begin my drive check? So that's your Vanguard swing. You boost with your rear guard, you swing with your Vanguard, whatever, you do your twin drive, and that's it. And finally, of course, you have, your left to right. And primarily, this should be the last column where it is the largest number that you can possibly think of. There are very few scenarios where you want the largest number to not go last. Mostly because you have people that when they want to guard, they usually want to do a one-card guard, which is that they only need one card in hand to guard a full attack swing. it's a strategy. People like to do it, and it's effective because it further incentivizes them to think that, oh, even if I hit a defensive trigger, the other attacks can possibly still hit me. And that's the mentality behind that. But that is what it looks like from here on out. You just do your left to right, you boost with your rear guard, and then you swing with whatever unit is in front of it. Because remember, when you declare a boost, you are giving whatever power is on this card, which in this case, we'll see 8K here, naturally. I'll make sure that the camera is good. And then you get to, add this power to the power of the card in front of it. And so you see here, her power is 10K. Whew. And so, by naturality, if we're not taking into account any boost, anything whatsoever, this is an 8, boosting a 10, which is 18K. An 18K. And so that introduces you to our first concept of the day, which is known as the magic numbers. The magic numbers is a concept that has been born into competitive Vanguard for one of the longest times possible. If you are new to this term, well, I'm glad that you can at least know what the magic number is. Now, magic number is a concept where you are telling your opponent that you need to drop an additional 5K shield in order to fully guard this attack. So what does that mean? Well, as a number that you just see displayed here, this is 8, this is 10, this is 18. Why is this number so significant? Well, on a prior stream where I showed you that all Vanguards have a 13K power base, as you see from this card right here. At least from what we've seen, all the Vanguards so far have a 13K power base. And that is the Vanguards where, as we hit the mid-game and end-game. So what happens here? Well, what is 18 minus 13? 5K. Yes, that's right. 5K power. Which means, how do I guard this attack? Well, if it's an 18K swing against a 13K Vanguard, normally I can drop a 10K shield, because a 10K plus 13 is 23. That guards, right? Well, yes, but you also have to keep in mind that you can't intercept either. So, for example, if I have, say, a grade 2 that's on my rear guard circle, right? And I'm trying to guard an attack for one card to make sure that whatever attack that they try and do on me, they end up losing out on maximizing that aggression because I only fished out one card from my hand. So, as you see from a lot of grade 2s from before, they all have a shield icon on the left side hand of the card. This designates their shield value, which is the power that they give to the opponent, to your Vanguard. Now, please do not get this confused with the power down below, because this power is what designates the power when it's swinging, as well as calculating for a power gain. This is strictly for defending. The 5K shield is strictly for defending. And most grade 2s, at least in OverDress, are 5K shield power. There may be additional skills that can grant them more, but at the base, 5K shield. So to put it in action, say I swing 18K at your Vanguard, 8 plus 10, 18. And so I just want one card and guard it. And say I don't need this rear guard for my turn, I can intercept. Well, the moment you place it on the Vanguard circle, you boost your Vanguard's power by 5, but remember, it actually boosted from 13 to 18. But the 18 is the exact same number of the unit attacking. And what does that tell you? It actually tells you that this attack will still hit, which means that if you have no other cards to guard with, you just gave them a free card and they still hit you. It's kind of like you can have your cake and eat it too type of deal. And magic numbers, that is one of the most important concepts you should ever pick up in Vanguard. If there's anything else that you did not learn from this stream or from what I'm trying to teach, at least understand the concept of magic numbers. It is the base rock foundation as to understanding how to play the game effectively, as well as planning out your strategy as to how many magic numbers can you hit during your battle phase. And so, as you see this in action, that means I have to drop another card from hand in order to fully guard the swing, which means that I probably need to guard this from hand. And that's this 5K power to make it not just 13, but 23. Because when you defend, you add up the shield values and you add it to the Vanguard. Then they all go to the drop zone if it was a rearguard swing or other effects happen. Or you just happen to, how do I say this? You guard the Vanguard, which means that you are allowing, say, 1 trigger to pass, 2 triggers to pass, or over trigger to pass. And you have to leave them in the Guardian Circle, because once they finish their drive check, then they can go ahead and get retired. Usually the questions that come up for those are for premium, but for now, let's just stick with OverDress. And so that's the concept of magic numbers. So, what? You have 13, 18, 23, 28, 33, 38, 43. Normally, these are all the card numbers that you should be committing to memory right now. And why is that? Well, let me just say, if there's another number that popped up besides 18, what if, say, this grade 2 unit was a 9K? Well, 9 and 8 is 17. And so when I swing, I can actually go ahead and just intercept, because guess what? 5 plus 13 is 18. And I successfully guard this attack for 1 card. You want to conserve your hand as much as possible in order to bring in... I'm sorry. You want to conserve your hand so that you have cards to play with for next turn. Because nothing hits worse than defending your opponent and realizing you guarded a little bit too much that you only have your Vanguard swing. And so magic numbers, always a concept to keep in mind, always a concept to memorize, because it's very important to keep track. And the most common numbers, of course, will be 13, 18, 23, 30, 28, 33, 38, and 43. And why is that? Well, we go as high as 43 for the sake of convenience. Because normally a lot of 1-card guards revolve around a 15k shield, which a 15k shield normally would be on triggers. So 15k power plus the 13, and what does that give you? 28k. Which means that any attack that is 27k or lower means that there's no luck. The attack is going to whiff, it's going to be successfully defended, and you have to move on to your next attack. So, 1-card guard goes as high as this, but they have also printed a healthy amount of triggers to help offset this noticeable discrepancy. And then you wonder, why is this notable discrepancy? Well, let's say that there are some cards out there that gain shield value. Now, as I've shown you before, say like this draw trigger. Draw triggers are unique for the fact that they also have a 5k only shield value increase. And this is normally okay. You know, that's the minimum that you can assign a shield value outside of going to what they call perfect guards. But they have additional effects that grant them more shield. Which means that, say, it's this one, if your opponent happens to be on grade 3, you gain 5k shield. Or you already have 5k shield on top of it. And so, when you guard, it increases it because of the text, oh, my opponent's at grade 3, I get 5k shield bonus. It seems modest, but it's very effective for the 1-card guard strategy. Because now, any character that tries to come at you and deals you damage, if they're swinging with 27 or 22k or less, you drop this draw trigger on them, you say, okay, this attack is successfully guarded, your 22 to my 23. The attack fails, and we will move on. And so what happens now? Well, you have to get out there and practice. You have to practice how to reach magic numbers. And with the various nations and ride lines and OverDress, there are multiple ways to hit magic numbers. Nothing hurts more than swinging in with something that you could have got that last shield out and could have been in your face hate. Well, on the bright side, you now have a way to digest this format into its raw basics. It is just the essence of understanding the raw magic numbers and the various ways to get there. As long as they get there, you put pressure on your opponent oh so much, because now they realize how much quality defending power you have, or they just have a bystander that acknowledges your attacking power. And so magic numbers, it's always setting them up correctly, and given that the threshold is 5k, at the very least if you have a 5K, say this was a 5K in front of this 10K, you do have 15K. Now, although that's not the one card guard scenario for an intercept, it still is a one card guard for 10K shields, like the draw trigger that I just showed you. So, now that we've gotten the magic numbers down pat, I hope that this helped you out. Now, the next part of this lesson, instead of magic numbers, we're going to dive into our skills. I like to call them quirks because they're just the unique tidbits that happen to inspire people to play the deck that they want because their skills are unique, the kit is cool, and you want to try it out. But skills are just as important as magic numbers, if not more, because it's through the skills that grant you the additional power bonuses, that grant you the additional shield bonuses, that grant you with additional unique skills that messes with your opponent. It's very important to understand the skills. And just like a certain YouTuber says, you read the card and explains the card. And there's plenty of reading to be done. And you just have to understand, what does that mean for you? Well, we can start with the deck that I currently have, Herminia, and let's see what her skill quirk is. On the Act Vanguard, Counterblast 1. So that means, since I had these two, I can Counterblast 1, pay cost, and then I get to activate a skill. Well, at the end, this unit gains a plus 5k power, which means you can automatically slap down a 5k shield, breaking quite a bit of one-card guard hands, or intercepts before. And then you also have at auto skill that occurs at the end of battle that attacks. So, just like how I showed you with boost and attack, if there is an end of battle skill, that is something to disclose as well. Well, at the end of the battle that this unit attacked, if the total number of cards in your soul and face-up cards in your damage zone is 0, you can discard a card, choose a rear guard with the powerful ability, and stand it. Then you reduce Counterblast 1 that's paid for this turn, by 1. And, it sounds like a mouthful, it really is, but when you get used to what the cards do, you automatically can make the assumption as to say, alright, this is a skill-heavy Reliant deck, or this is a deck that you can just turn off your brain and go autopilot mode. Whatever it takes to reach the top. So, when understanding how the skill works, there are, I would say, 3 different categories of stuff to go through when you're analyzing the skill. And going into what I did with the Art of Defense article, for this one, you have either revolving around the power gain, which is the magic numbers. You have just the, I'm so sorry. You have the power gains, the magic numbers. You have the skills or quirks, and then you also have the dreaded offensive theme of multi-attacking. Now, one of those 3 strategies is prevalent in each different nation and or ride line. You want to encourage people to explore out their boundaries, to try and understand how these combos serve my purpose, and what do I like to see in terms of combos. It takes a little bit of self-reflection thought, but alas, we are here to try and understand what these skills do. And the skills, let's start with the first one, which is magic numbers, are basically the same. The first skill I read on Herminia is that you just Counterblast 1 and you gave 5k. The skill seems nominal at best because, you just gain 5k power and nothing else? That's pretty suspicious. Well, not so suspicious when you realize that if your opponent tries to intercept on you, you actually have to force them out to drop another card, which is a very good way of recording everything for how power gains work. 5k, your magic number for absolutely everything. And when you gain 5k, it unlocks a little bit of a secret tech you can do, because if my Vanguard has so much power on her own, what makes you think I need the booster? well, you still have the booster to clear some power threshold. But if your Vanguard is doing fine on its own, hitting that magic number, then your rear guard in the back can either just nominally boost or offer a different perspective and be another kind of voice in your ear to tell you, hey, swing here first, swing here first. And so that is the first type of skill, which is the power gain, the magic numbers. And so what is the second skill that you can activate? Well, let's just call it a skill or quirk, where these are unique types of effects that can only be found within the nation or clan, what have you. And when we're diving into this particular part, I cannot give so easily of a full head down, top down angle of everything regarding the skills. There's plenty of different skills out there to learn, to crunch, and to practice. Well, these quirks skills can be further divided into maybe 3 general categories. You have the mental skills, where you are trying to outwit your opponent. This could be through manipulating what's on the top of their deck, so it changes how they guard, because if they keep an ice cream on top, then they cannot breathe a sigh of relief yet, because they possibly have some more stuff to do to you. That is one type of skill that's out there. The second type of skill is actually for just built-in Vanguard damage, just to increase your aggression. And this can be done in the form of a menacing threat. This can be done in the form of a stressful, high-stakes scenario. And by putting the pressure on your opponent, very important. After looking at how innocent-looking power gains are, skills are definitely more complex. And so with the first one, which is kind of like, your normal everyday guy, just trying to get by in the world, and whether they have the power or not, they do have a way to swing. And they might have a secret tech that they have that can make even their attacks more effective. And so how do you do this? Well, the quirks usually involve something around messing with how my opponent guards, or attacking my defensive resources when it's not even the beginning of the battle phase. And so what does that mean? Well, the quirks I like to call guard restriction, probably one of my favorite skills in the entire game of Cardfight Vanguard, is a way to restrict what your opponent can use to guard. And in this case, if it was his ankle or so that gets caught, you attack that weakness. So, when you are understanding how guard restriction works, it's kind of like you look at that wound, you see something there, they're definitely not moving, and you can just go in and just finish the job to capture it. Like queen to rook or knight to bishop. You just eat it up because the quirk allows you to mess with your opponent in a way that's more psychological than, say, a direct confrontation. And so, an example of a quirk or skill that I have is none other than Laura Nero. And what does Laura Nero do? Well, on her second song sung, she immediately unlocks the ability to gain a special effect. Not only sing another song and gain a critical, but to also restrict my opponent from guarding with their hand effectively. And that is through guard restriction, where your opponent cannot use sentinels to guard this attack. As stated from before, there are many, many decks that offer some sort of guard restriction that is normally maybe something looking like that. You can't use perfect guards, you can't use sentinels, but you can use other cards to guard with. The official way to help counter that type of stuff is to allocate your defensive resources in order to maximize the probability of getting enough cards to hand, where if they decide to pull the trigger and try and get you, you are at least adequately prepared to fight. So, with guard restriction, that is one thing. Another popular quirk skill mechanic in Cardfight Vanguard OverDress is none other than multiple card guarding. Now, everyone wants to guard efficiently, which is why you have the one card guard rule. But there is a sense that you should be able to drop something in order to get access on guarding efficiently next turn. You may not have an explosive turn the first time around, but not many people win on the first try. So, to elaborate, let's dive into how this works. So, the skill, such as a player defending against the likes of, say, Flagberg, are now on the receiving end of that the next time the Vanguard attacks, or if a rear guard swing, you have to kind of just satiate that. You have to kind of just accept that fate will happen. But you don't have to worry about that for too long, because when it comes to defending against skills, again, you can help prepare for that type of stuff. For low and narrow, you use your perfect guards early so that you have a better chance of seeing better cards down the line. And I do appreciate that, because the time it takes to evaluate the skill of a card versus how the skill goes in practice is sometimes on elongated timeline, and I can try and memorize all the skills in Cardfight Vanguard, but I can't. It's too much. My head will probably explode. So, looking into the skill of multiple card guarding in hand, such as Flagberg, if you were to drop one card from hand to guard an attack, instead you would have to drop 2. Or 3, 4, mostly 5, from what I remember. And that type of strategy is important because, especially if your opponent does not know what you're playing, and they have a skill that either restricts what cards you can guard with, or they force people to guard at gunpoint, whatever, because they have to, they have to push in order to win the game. And I find the process of guarding so entertaining that I did do a whole series about it. To look into other quirks, you have Sentinel guards. You have to guard multiple cards from hand to guard a singular attack, or else you're all gonna have to say no guard. When the opponent swings, they say, okay, you need 3 cards in hand. You need to guard with 3 cards in hand when you choose to guard from hand, which is important because sometimes all you need is that interceptor to help intercept a poke, and you can just send them on their merry way. But when it comes to that particular part of the Cardfight Vanguard game, but now if you're staring it down, the barrel of a gun, and you're dealing with the skill that you have to now dedicate 3 cards versus 1, what would you do? Well, that is something you have to keep in mind, how to defend. But when you're attacking, you don't have to worry. You just know that they are more likely to take the damage and risk hopefully getting a heal trigger or an over trigger on defense to just deal with the attack and move on. I can't tell you how many times it would happen where you either 5k off short for trying to play the numbers game, or you just get involved with an awkward crowd when you're trying to understand the various skills that you have to defend against. Because all it takes is a new card and you don't realize what's that. And that can change how the rest of the game flows because you at least spoke up to understand, oh, so this is what it means. This is what it means. So the way that the guard is that if you still guard with 1 card in hand, they technically call that just not a legal guard. You just put that back to your hand. Because the ruling on restricting your opponent from calling just 1 guard and forced to call 2 or 3 or more, it is important for you to allocate those resources to make sure that, okay, if anything, I will take that hit. Because I do not want to overguard cards and not lose out on them. And I'm very sorry. I think I just messed that one up. Okay. Let me just make sure that I probably have to turn back on my camera because I realized that my droid cam is a little off. Okay. So loading the droid cam. Pog. Very sorry about that. Okay. So, but at least the focus is on the field. That's my main thing. So then that's your second type of thing, dealing with skills. And although there are many skills to go off of when it comes to those special types of anti-guard efficient patterns, you have the third basic strategy of offense, which is multi-attacking. As I demonstrated for you before, we have swung in 3 times. 2 rear guard swing columns and 1 vanguard swing column. Now, there are nations out there that actually get to extend this rule in a few ways. Sometimes you generate just a new marker, a shout out to V Premium, and you can call another front row rear guard there. Or you have rear guards that either restand other rear guards, which means that you actually get a 4th swing in addition to every other swing that you had this turn. It's a double-edged sword, multi-attacking. You live by it and you die by it. Why so? Well, let's go over the following. So, in multi-attacking, you can feel confident that you have your 3 natural swings. But say you have a skill that grants you the ability to multi-attack. And so this could be, say, like on placement or on attack, do X. Sometimes, say for example, we'll pretend this one has a skill where if it's boosted, you pay cost. In this case, you can say what's called Counterblast 1. And you can restand the unit. So say like this column already attacked and is rested. You can swing with this column and swing on attack, Counterblast 1, restand this column. So what does this mean here? Which means that you are already developing a strategy around multi-attacking that you are generating further advantage through aggression. You're spending a little bit more resources to generate a little more aggression with attacking. Now, why do I call this a double sword? Well, because you are risking, of course, the grand boogeyman of defensive triggers, whether it's a defensive over trigger or just a defensive trigger in general. You have to allocate for that. And early on in the game, triggers will probably be flying out. They'll probably be flying on drive checks, on damage checks, or you could possibly see drive checks until both of you hit grade 3. But when you think about it, multi-attacking has always had this crutch where, say, I swing in with this first one and they decide not to guard it, but they take, what? A defensive trigger. We'll just put a defensive trigger like here. Like, oh, I damage check a defensive draw trigger. I'm going to put this in the damage zone, I'm going to assign 10k to my Vanguard, and I'm going to draw a card. And so what does that do to the multi-attacking deck? It actually destroys their momentum quite a bit, because that means that the magic number has increased 10 by 10k. I'm sorry, I'm trying to find if it was appropriate to say 10k or something else. 10k. Because now instead of 13k, you're dealing with 23k. Which means that this column, which normally would be 18, if I swing into the Vanguard, the opponent's not going to do anything because it's not going to hit. The power is too less to consider than the Vanguard itself. Which is why multi-attacking has had that eternal problem of dealing with defensive triggers. Because nothing takes the winds out of your sail than when you swing first to begin your multi-attacking strategy and they damage check a trigger right off the bat. It's a tough loss. Very, very tough. And so, what happens when you think about multi-attacking? Probably still one of the most popular strategies ever. It's been very prevalent in V Premium just because if you're going to attack X number of times, your opponent's eventually going to run out of cards to guard in hand, which means that you can rough them up and get yourself ready for a big dub. So that is multi-attacking. It's pros and its cons. So that's the 3 different ways of processing your battle phase, of thinking, what are your magic numbers? What skills do you have access to? And this can be further divided as to, do you have quirk skills that affect how your opponent guards, or that maybe generates you further advantage by giving you more resources? Or with third, you can evaluate how many attacks can I get in with this game under the concept of magic numbers with what's going on with their skills. And this is how the trifecta comes together. You are seeing in person how a Cardfight Vanguard player evaluates offense by seeing this and this and this. Now, seeing how you achieve multi-attack is probably one of the simplest ones. You swing, you pay cost, you restand. But there are other ways to generate multi-attacking besides that traditional way. You actually can have some cards that can swing from back row. So, in case you don't want a booster, if you have a card that hits magic numbers, you can actually capitalize on that strategy by saying, hey, I'm going to attack from the back row. Which means that if all these could attack, you would have 6 different swings on one turn, which is insane. But keep in mind, since that we do not have boosted power, these are considered half powers, and that you're going to be just poking them, which means that if one defensive trigger later, you automatically have to switch off from attack duty to boost duty, because you have to make up for that lost power differential when they damage check that trigger. And so those are the 3 different things you should keep in mind when you are venturing into offense. Of how efficiently can you swing, what magic numbers can I hit, how many skills would I need to activate to have this to be a successful turn, and what do I do when my opponent doesn't die? They did not take the 6 damage, or they healed out of it. Well, that we can get into the next stream, where I can try and break down the process of going over the art of defense. So, for simply explaining what this is for offense, it's fine. It's just a couple of simple strategies to get you started, and you can go down a rabbit hole of which strategy to master first. You can do the magic numbers, where you can just count what powers you have. You can look at the skills, so say the skills help give you power to close in on that magic number threshold, or give you the skills to help extend your attacks, or give you special abilities that your opponent will have to guard in an awkward fashion. And that is the goal of today's stream, to teach you the beginning of successfully attacking. Now, these strategies are all good, but what can you keep in mind? So, as you incorporate these 3 different main topics into your attack strategy, there is a general overarching theme that many competitive players like to incorporate, which is you attack small to large. Now, given what I've talked about defensive triggers before, it is important for you to understand that attacking smaller numbers to larger numbers, it's important for the sole fact that if you swing with a higher number and they damage check a defensive trigger, you are risking a full column or another rear guard from trying to aggressively damage your opponent's Vanguard, and you remove them from the equation. And you have to rely on your Vanguard swing to drive check triggers to make up for that power loss. It is the utmost important that people learn what it's like to attack low to high. The exceptions to this policy is that if you find yourself wanting to finish the game as soon as possible, whether you're on a time crunch because of judge calling time, or that you know that your opponent has cards in hand from what you saw them drive check from before. And when you realize this, attacking low to high is the way to go. So say, you attack your 6k here, 8k here, 10k here, 13k here. And then when you add in the boost, you add it up as you go on. Now, when you try and master the strategy of attacking low to high, it can be very tempting to try and just end the game immediately. Fight that temptation and stick with the strategy to keep yourself consistent. Because many people, when they get blown up, when they accidentally make that misplay where they could have attacked an additional time to aggressively outplay your opponent, it will end up blowing up in your face if you mess that up. So that is the case of understanding how the concept of attacking low to high works. And that is pretty much, I guess, all I have for this kind of short stream for just teaching you the basics of offense. You have your 3 basic strategies, an overarching theme, and just hopefully some food for thought as you continue to build your deck. Now, on the next episode of Dressing Up for OverDress, I want to make sure that I will get you a good kind of primer on defending. Because I gave you a little bit of a preview here with the 1-card guard strategy, but there's a lot more to dive into when it comes to defending, especially in OverDress. There are some particular nuances that have carried over from V Premium, but there are some new things that pop up in V Premium as well. So, on that note, before I sign off, I do want to put in a little bit of an announcement. I know that it's very late. I know Nick from the Legacy crew reached out about it, and although I had a video up for it, that was an original video that had to be taken down because the venue was wrong. So, at least for what it's worth, I will at least make a gentle announcement reminder that there is going to be a Cardfight Vanguard tournament on Saturday, which is tomorrow. Now, it's not just the locals, but it's going to be at the Legacy Haven in PA. Now, I can bring up the event page for you, but of course, to try and avoid myself from getting doxxed, I always go to the event page, so you get to. I will read off the invitations for you. So let me make sure. I go to Legacy Vanguard, and you go to your events. You get to see what's been going on. So, the events that you happen to have here is going to be the Legacy Cup PA, the very first. And so, it's at the Nerd Haven, so my apologies for that. So, the Nerd Haven is in the middle of Pennsylvania. Entry fee is going to be $20. You need your deck recipe to be submitted before round 1 starts through the Bushiroad Deck Builder app. And it'll be custom prize pool for custom mats for top 4, and just, packs involved. The venue for this address is 124 East Main Street in Lock Haven, Pennsylvania. The zip code is 17745. Unfortunately, the Team Gradelock fam will not be able to make it. I know that because of myself recently, I'm still under the COVID scare arc, which I have to stay at home outside of work for 1 more week before I can feel comfortable going out. And I'll try and see if I can catch up on some rest in the meantime. But I will send all my support and love to support out the Legacy crew as they branch out into different venues out of state. And it is amazing to see how far the scene has evolved from them. And as sad to say I wish I could go, I knew that at least with the travel situation, and at least now with the Rona scare situation, I am unable to go. But that should not discourage you if you are willing, able, and healthy to make it out there and support the event. Because Cardfight Vanguard is a wonderful game that we all should continue to have, should we continue to watch, and continue to play. It's a wonderful game, and to see what the Legacy crew has put together has been no short of amazing. And so, I hope that if you happen to have time and can make the trip, to go over to the Nerd Haven in Pennsylvania and see what you have for yourself. You've seen the vlogs, you've seen our journeys, you've seen our VOD streams. And now, tomorrow at 12 p.m., you get a chance to take a part in Legacy Vanguard history. And to participate in this is going to be an OverDress event, so bring your standard decks with you. And I wish you all well, and if you are going to that tournament tomorrow, tell them Team Gradelock sent you. Tell them that the Legacy crew is strong and alive and well. And so I thank you so much for your time. It has been a wonderful stream just to go over some Cardfight Vanguard concepts with you. And also, if you can make it out to the Nerd Haven, please do so. That is it for me, guys. I'm the AlphonZeus Team Gradelock. I'm going to be signing out. I'm going to have some dinner and rest. And yes, I'll wish you well. I'll catch you all next time, hopefully on Monday, for another stream where we get to dive into the art of defense. So, cheers, guys. Take care.